Hello and welcome back to part 2 of our live coverage of the GT Cup Championship from Donington Park. Now we're already one race down, one more to go, which is the endurance race, and we'll have that for you in just a few minutes' time. The first race though, the sprint, my goodness me, was that an eventful race, particularly at the end. If you missed it, here's what happened.
So the second sprint race of the weekend again would see Morgan Tilbrook and Hugo Cook on the front row of the grid. As they headed up towards Redgate Corner for the first time, though, it would be Morgan Tilbrook from pole position that would take up the lead of the race, with Hugo Cook having little choice but to slot in second place. And it would be Simon Orange, the championship leader, that was there in third position. Everybody safely making it through the first corner. Later on in the race, though, there were problems for the number 77 car of Mark Hopton, whilst the squabble for the lead of the race was still side by side. Hugo Cook just about getting his nose ahead, but at the next corner, off he went, just briefly running wide at Coppice Corner. That would allow Morgan Tilbrook back into the lead of the race. The battle between the pair of them would continue as they fought their way through the traffic. Sam Randon returning to the championship, getting out of harm's way, but then a small mistake lapping the traffic for Hugo Cook would put his car into the gravel trap down at the old hairpin. He would be out of the race, and that would bring out the safety car just as the rain started to fall. That would mean that Graham Tilley would get caught out and put his car in towards the barriers. There were many cars, though, getting caught out, including Ian Campbell, who had a spin just behind Simon Orange, who'd already run wide on a couple of corners. But the rain would continue to fall. Simon Orange would then get caught out as well. He would get restarted, but would lose championship points by the time he'd got the McLaren back on the track. Sam Brandon off at Coppice Corner, and the story just went on and on as so many drivers, experienced or inexperienced, were all getting caught out in the wet conditions on slick tyres. But Morgan Tilbrook would be the driver that would master these tricky conditions and would come through to make it 3 out of 3 this weekend at the wheel of the Enduro Motorsport McLaren. And it was second position for the first time this season to the Paddock Motorsport crew of Steve Ruston and John Whitehouse. That was their best result of the season in the tricky conditions. Even at the final corner, there were still spins. James Wallace getting caught out at the wheel of the Beluga Porsche. He would have a rotation. He would get the car towards the checkered flag, though. So it was a tricky race for everybody. They were all pleased to see the checkered flag.
Thanks for that, Mark. And thankfully, the weather looks like it's cleared up for this second race, although there is a rather ominous black cloud hanging around. But fingers crossed, we'll be all right. Now, just before we get to the racing, I've managed to find another familiar face to GT Cup. Warren Gilbert, you're here.
Hi. How you doing? Hi.
More importantly, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not doing too bad. It's been, I guess, 6 weeks since I had the accident. It's been quite well publicised. I'm okay. I get tired and I get a bit short of breath, but I think that's age anyway. I mean, it was quite a big accident. I don't remember any of it, so I remember getting in the car, and then the next thing I remember, I was in Coventry Hospital. I love helicopters. I missed the flight out there, and I had tubes in my side. I mean, it was quite a decent tally. I mean, I believe I broke my shoulder, I broke my pelvis, broke my inner groin, punctured my lung, I broke 10 ribs, half broke my neck, and I got a bit of spinal damage. But apart from that, I'm good.
Okay. You look remarkably well,
Yeah,
and
not too
6
bad.
weeks.
Yeah, I'm just putting a brave face on it, really.
Yeah.
But, you know, the fantastic part about the whole thing is that, you know, Jensen and his family have been so fantastic to us as two people, myself and my wife, and to the team. And so Jensen's now in our car, driving with my wife for the championship. And they're currently leading the class, second overall in the whole championship, second in the team, and I couldn't be more proud. So I'm really chuffed to bits.
Yeah, I was going to speak to you about that, of course, because you are second overall in the standings. And how lovely that Charlotte's been able to step in and do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, Charlotte was already driving the Lamborghini with another Charlotte, but to now be in the lead car and with Jensen, after everything that the family have done for both of us, it's just fantastic, you know. And in some ways, it couldn't be any better. It's a bit of a fairy tale story, really. So it's really nice, really good.
Yeah, so obviously you're not here racing, you're here supporting. How are you finding this weekend?
Bloody boring. No, I'd like to be in the car. I don't know if I could have done a much better job than they've done anyway. I am missing it. I'm not being put off. So I'm looking forward to getting in. I would have driven this weekend, but I don't think anyone will allow me near the car. But yeah, no, it's okay. I'll be back next year. I'm this year's finished.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah,
Would we
no.
see you at Snetterton? But it's a no.
You'll see me there, but not driving. So it may well. I will tell you this though, because we may well be doing something that is a little bit of a record. We are trying to enter the Silverstone Citroen C1 24-hour race in May.
Wow.
Now, as far as I'm aware, and the organisers, no family has ever done it. We'll be the first people in history. The whole family drives, and we'll all be doing it together. So I think Martin Short did it with 3 members of his family, but they had to get an outside person. We don't need an outside person, providing I can drive.
Yeah.
So we're looking at doing that if I'm well enough. But the whole thing hinges on it needs to be the last weekend in May,
Right.
and that gives us 5 days to get Remy a licence so he can drive. So anyway, that'll be a bit of fun.
Oh, well, that's really exciting. And the good news is that you are planning to come back for next season.
Oh yeah, no, I really will. I mean, providing Jensen will have me, and then I'll come back. And if not, the other thing we would like to do is maybe drive with Charlotte. You know, we both of us drive together, but you know, we'll have to see.
Oh, well, listen, it's really good to see you. Great to see you looking so well.
Lovely to
And
talk to you.
fingers crossed for your team.
Absolutely, thank you very much.
This weekend sees the GT Cup Championship return to Donington Park, where it held its first rounds of the 2022 championship season. But that was on the shorter national circuit. This weekend, we're on the full Grand Prix layout. As for the circuit itself, it can trace its roots back to 1931, pre-war, when it first held motor racing. It's got 3 separate sectors that the circuit is broken into, and there are 11 different corners around what is a circuit just under 2.5 miles. With all of the undulation, it varies in altitude 40 metres from its highest to its lowest point. Sector 1 sees the cars through Redgate and Hollywood, Sector 2 from the Craner curves through the Old Hairpin and McLean's and Coppice, and Sector 3 sees them through the Fogarty S's, the Melbourne Hairpin, and back through the left-hander at Goddard's. That's a lap of the Grand Prix circuit here at Donington.
Thanks for that little reminder of the track there, Mark, if you missed it last time. Well, the pit window is literally just opening. The first car's just gone out, so we'll be heading out onto the grid shortly. I'm actually just outside where Top Cats Racing is, and we were, of course, speaking to Warren Gilbert, and it's Jensen Lunn, I believe, that's sitting in that car number 9 that's just behind me, heading out shortly for this particular pit stop race. And don't forget that this is going to be a 50-minute race, so it's pretty much double what the sprint normally is. And there is the different sort of pit stop windows, which Mark can tell us a little bit more about, because there are different timings for this, aren't there, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely, and it varies each day, Michelle, because whatever we do on the Saturday, we do the opposite on the Sunday. So it's a 50-minute race, which means for those cars that are in Group GTB, Group GTH and Group GTA, they pitted second yesterday, the second pit stop window, which means for today, they're the first pit stop window. So their pit stop window opens between the 24th and the 29th minute of the race. And for the cars that run in Group GT3 and Group GTC for this weekend, the cars that are going to be towards the front of the grid, the more powerful cars, the faster cars, they pit second today. They pit between the 29th and the 35th minute of the race, so they'll be the second lot to stop.
Yeah.
And as ever, Michelle, of course, the pros can't start this race, so the pro drivers will jump in for part 2.
Yeah, and in fact, it's gone out now, but we had Sam Neary, who's now racing as a pro driver, so he'll be going in second with Dad, team manager. I will cross over in a moment, but I just want to make sure that we're clear here in the pit lane before I do. We've had a couple of cars, I've got my list here, drop out, haven't we, Mark? I know that the number 77 was a very recent one that's unfortunately not going out, and Graham Tilley's not going to be in the race either.
No, we saw on the highlights there the fact that Mark Hopton very early on got tangled up and put his car into the barriers coming out of the Melbourne Hairpin. That car too badly damaged for Greystone GT to turn around and repair in time for this race. And also Graham Tilley, got caught out. He was on wet tyres, he was telling me over the course of the lunch break. On wet tyres, he was trying to push hard. Yeah, he was trying to push and he just dipped a wheel onto the curb and it spat him from one side to the other. And amazingly for Graham Tilley, that's almost the identical piece of barrier he hit the same meeting last year when he was in the Nissan and did exactly the same thing.
Wow, okay. Well, I think we're safe to actually cross over onto the grid now. I'll tell you what, the sun's come out, Mark. I feel a bit of warmth on me. How lovely. Gosh, that bodes well for this race. Looking at the grid, and we'll see when the cars come out, I notice there's quite a familiar sort of look to earlier on, in actual fact, because we've still got Morgan Tilbrook, Marcus Clutton on pole position, and then Hugo Cook is still second.
That's been the case all weekend. Those two cars have dominated the front row of the grid. Yes, Hugo Cook has started from pole on an occasion or two, but those two cars, the 36 and the 66, have been on the front row of the grid for every single race so far this weekend.
Yeah, and it's good because, of course, Hugo didn't go quite so well in the last race, and he sort of came off into the gravel. But, of course, it's all to do with fastest laps, isn't it? That's how this whole thing works. So he obviously got second fastest lap in the sprint. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, he popped in a quick lap time before he had his off when he got tripped up heading through some back markers and the conditions changed. Yeah, Hugo Cook with that good lap time that he put in. It doesn't mean because he retired from the sprint race he starts at the back. No, he gets to start from the front because of the quick lap time.
Yeah, which is excellent. Now, something I wanted to speak to you about, we were actually having a chat about this over lunch. Morgan Tilbrook, he's obviously going to be on pole position again.
Yep.
Now, if he had a really comfortable win on the last race, if he wins this could be, well, it basically means a four-win race weekend, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. The number 66 car has claimed victory already 3 times out of the 3 races that we had. If Morgan Tilbrook and Marcus Clutton can overcome the 75 seconds they have to spend in the pits, plus the extra 20 because they won yesterday's pit stop race, so they'll be stationary for 95 seconds. If they can overcome that, they would win all 4 races this weekend, and that would be the first time that's happened this year, Michelle. The last time it happened was when Sam and Richard Neary did it on our first visit to Snetterton in the 2021 championship season, so it doesn't happen very often.
No, it doesn't, which would be superb for them. I might go and see if I can have a quick word with them while they're here. Let's have a follow me. Seeing as the door is open, I'll take that as an invite. Hello. I'm just going to stick my microphone in. We were just talking about you and saying that if you get this win, that will be literally a 4-win weekend for you, which hasn't happened this season yet.
Yeah, that'd be pretty special. But we're starting with a 20-second penalty, plus Marcus is on old tyres, so we only nominated 2 tyres for today and yesterday. So quite a few of the other pros are going to go on new at the change. So it's going to be pretty tough to try and get the full sweep. But with what's happened in the last few days, you never know. There's lots of things that could happen. Weather could, safety cars. So we'll give it a good go. But it'd be a magical weekend if we can do it.
Yeah. Well, listen. The best of luck. We'll keep our fingers crossed for you, and at least the sun's shining now.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
All right. There we go. So fingers crossed for them, which is looking really good. Who have I got here? We've got Simon Orange. I haven't spoken to Simon. I normally always speak to him at least once in the weekend, so I should probably say a quick hello to Simon as well. Simon Orange! I haven't spoken to you all weekend. I feel like I'm missing out.
It's because I've had a terrible weekend. You've had no need to. Mind you, we have bought you a birthday present, so make sure you don't leave without it.
Right, I'm heading straight to your garage afterwards. I want a birthday win, Simon. That's what I want.
So do I. So do I, Michelle.
But listen, good luck. I'm going to have to get out of here shortly. Oh, birthday present. I wonder what that could be. How exciting. One thing to mention as well is Ian Loggy racing. He normally does this endurance, the pit stop race, by himself, but he's not this weekend, is he, Mark?
No, absolutely. It came about as a very last-minute arrangement, but Ian Loggy is partnered up with the British GT star Phil Keane for this weekend. They do have some success this year because the two of them raced in the Portimao 24-hour in a GT4 Mercedes, and they claimed a class win out there. So partnered up with Ian. We'll see how they get on today in the sprint race, in the pit stop race, because yesterday they finished a little bit further down through the order, just off the podium in 4th position in yesterday's pit stop race.
Yeah, well listen, their siren's going off, so I think I'd probably better clear the tarmac. But there you go, there is your grid for a full rundown. The engines are starting. I will hand you back over to Mark, and we are going to go racing for the last time this week here at Donington Park.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, so the grid is cleared of the final few officials and team members. The engines are already started on the cars, and as you can see, what were grey skies above for the sprint race, we've got blue sky here now at Donington Park, and the sun managing to sneak through just to warm the conditions. So let's guide you through the grid then, and the way that they line up, and their starting drivers with the success seconds as well. So Morgan Tilbrook starts with form pole position, 95 seconds that car will spend in the pit lane. Alongside is Hugo Cook, who will be stationary for 85. Row 2 of the grid, Simon Orange, 90 seconds in the pit lane. Alongside is Mike Price, who will be stationary for 75. Row 3 of the grid, Ian Loggy, 75 seconds in the pit lane, and it's the same for number 23, Ian Campbell. With row 4 of the grid being John Whitehouse, stationary for 60 seconds, and there'll be a gap alongside where Graham Tilley is not able to take part. Row 5 of the grid, James Webb drives solo, 60 seconds in the pit. Alongside is number 9, Jensen Lund, stationary for 80 seconds. And row 6 of the grid is Rich Mason, 75 seconds in the pit lane, alongside Andre Borodin, stationary for the same amount of time. Row 7 of the grid is James Kell, 70 seconds, and James Wallace, who'll be stationary for 80. With row 8 being Tim Kresick, 60 seconds in the pit lane, and it's 85 for Roy Millington that sits alongside. Row 9 of the grid, on the inside it's Tomer Shahan, that will sit there on the inside of that 9th row of the grid, 70 seconds, and alongside is Charlotte Birch, who'll be stationary for 90. With row 10 being Ed McDermott, also on 90 seconds, as is the number 6 car that sits alongside of Alex Stevenson. Row 11 of the grid, 60 seconds in the pit lane for Stephen Walton. Alongside is Phil Carter, who is on 75. With row 12 being number 72, Chris Murphy, 75 seconds in the pit lane for the Beamer. Alongside is Will Dendy, who drives solo. He'll be stationary for 60. The 13th row of the grid, there should be a gap where Mark Hopton has not been able to make it out, so Paul Maxfield will start on his own in the Ginetta, 75 seconds in the pit lane. And at the back of the grid will be the Audi. David Frankland will be stationary for 95. And all of that comes about because if you are a sporting class driver, i.e. an AM, you are stationary for 60 seconds. If you are partnered with a pro sporting driver, you're stationary for 70. If you've got a pro on board with you, it's 75. And then if you won your group in the last pit stop race that you competed in, you add 20 seconds. If you were second in your group, it's 15. If you were third in your group, it's 10. There's the success seconds that exist. So that's how we get to all of those different permutations and calculations with regards to how long each car has to remain stationary as they change driver or not, as the case may be. Most of the cars do have 2 drivers. Some of them, however, do not, including, of course, that number 36 Mercedes on the outside of the front row of the grid, which is Hugo Cook. So is that number 66 car going to make the clean sweep this weekend? Morgan Tilbrook will remain stationary for 95 seconds. Hugo Cook alongside for 85. The cars on the second row of the grid, it's 90 and 75. And the cars on the third row of the grid, it's 75 and 75. So Morgan Tilbrook needs to try and build an advantage because he knows he's going to have to stop for 20 seconds longer than some cars, potentially 35 seconds longer than others in his group, that being Group GT3. So the cars head up towards Goddard's Corner for the final time under the safety car, hopefully this weekend. And we're about to get round 22 of the 2022 GT Cup Championship underway here at Donington Park. Morgan Tilbrook from pole position as the lights go out, gets a really good start. Simon Orange, not a bad start. Ian Loggy is looking to try and thread the needle in the Mercedes with his lights on through the middle, but it's going to be Morgan Tilbrook that leads the way from Hugo Cook in second place, Simon Orange in third, Ian Loggy in fourth, and I think Ian Campbell just gets ahead of the light green Mercedes there of Mike Price, who drops down to the bottom of the top 6 as they all head down through the Craner curves for the first time, and also keeping an eye on what's going on between the 2 Lamborghinis fighting away for the lead of Group GTC. We've got somebody shortcutting across the grass there and about to rejoin onto the tarmac, and when they do, it is going to be Alex Stevenson at the wheel of the G56 Ginetta that went rallycrossing down through the Craner curves, but no harm done, hopefully. Should continue in the race. Towards Coppice goes Morgan Tilbrook, leading from Hugo Cook, so it's McLaren from Mercedes, the top 4 as things stand, and in fact it's McLaren from Mercedes for the top 6 actually, because it's Ian Campbell that is ahead of the light green car of Mike Price. And in the background, the early leader of Group GTC is the number 9 Lamborghini in the hands of Jensen Lund, because he's managed to get himself through and ahead of the light blue car of James Webb in the early stages. So through the S's they'll go for the first time. Interesting what Morgan Tilbrook was saying is that they only nominated 2 sets of tyres for this weekend. You can nominate 3 over the course of the weekend, so Morgan Tilbrook well aware that there might be an element of more drop-off in his car than some of the others which are opting to change tyres. Mike Price trying to sneak up the inside of Ian Campbell to steal 5th place away. got rather tight, but there was just enough room between the pair of them. So the order in the top 6 still remains the same at the moment. McLaren, Mercedes, McLaren, Mercedes, McLaren, Mercedes. And all 6 of those cars inside the top 6 all run in Group GT3. In 7th place, it's the leading Group GTC car in the early stages, which is Jensen Lunn in the Top Cats Racing with Hex.com Lamborghini Super Trofeo. So out of the old hairpin for the second time, starting to sprint their way up towards the fast, flat-out left-hand King-Cut Schwantz, then onto the brakes and in towards McLean's corner. Hugo Cook looking very racy, I've got to say, in second place, keen to make amends from the problems that befell him in the sprint race earlier on, when he made that small mistake through the traffic and put the car into the gravel. It's brought about the safety car just as the rain started to fall. No chance of that at the moment. There's a few more sort of greyish looking clouds above, but they certainly don't look ominous at this stage. But the leading 3 pretty much together, because it's been a good lap from Simon Orange this time through. The number 67 Orange Racing, powered by JMH McLaren, in the hands of the championship leader, remember, is not that far adrift from the leading pair. 3 of them pretty equidistantly spread as they head out of the Melbourne hairpin and start to charge their way up towards Goddard's. So this is lap number 2 that's about to be completed. Remember, all of these cars running at the sharp end stop in the second pit window today, so they cannot stop until the 29th minute of the race at the very earliest. And that is still a long, long way away, so you've got to keep pushing. First of the flying laps, the fastest car out there, the second place car, Hugo Cook, 129.1. It means that the lead advantage is just 0.3 of a second, and a further 0.7 off that is going to be the car in the hands of Simon Orange. A bit of contact with the Audi by the look of things, some damage to the tail end of the Group GTB Audi of David Franklin's. That might have been Chris Murphy's BMW that just took a little bit of a bite out of the Audi. Those 2 cars fighting for what would be the lead of Group GTB at this stage, as the drivers for the lead of the race, fighting for the lead of Group GT3, head for the 3rd time round through Coppice Corner. Into the pit lane comes Chris Murphy, so there must have been some contact between the pair of them. So let's have a quick look. Yeah, I think it's Audi into BMW. Chris Murphy links the BMW into towards the pit lane, and Chris Murphy, he's had luck this weekend. Unfortunately, it's all been bad because there were gearbox woes with that car at the start of the weekend, and it's ended with damage, I'm afraid. Good fight going on in Group GTH. Now, this is going to be Phil Carter in the Greystone McLaren, fighting away with the Make Happen Racing Mercedes of Stephen Walton. And just off that is the ABBA Racing Mercedes of Ed McDermott. Now, they're going to be fighting for what will be 6th, 7th and 8th in Group GTH at this stage. And that will be 17th, 18th and 19th positions overall. So through the S's they will go. And start to make their way down towards the downhill braking area. The circuit drops away down into the braking area for the Melbourne hairpin. So easy to outbrake yourself to a degree, but there's plenty of tarmac to try and get the car sort of straightened up and get back on the power again to propel it up the hill. There you go, you can see the car of Philip Carter, 6th in the group, Stephen Walton, Ed McDermott, 7th and 8th respectively. So through and over the start-finish line, they will all work their way. Ed McDermott just running very slightly wide coming out of Goddard's corner, but good value squabble that is. Back to the lead of the race, and Simon Orange has maybe lost half a car length to the leading pair, so not quite equidistantly spread anymore, are they, between the pair of them, because Simon Orange was a couple of tenths slower than the race leader and a full tenth slower than the Mercedes of Hugo Cook, so he's just dropped away to a very small amount. You can see their last lap times there on the screen showing the relative gaps having moved, but there's still less than a second and a half between all 3 of them as they head down in towards the Melbourne hairpin for what is now the 4th time of asking. Tilbrook a little bit slower going into the corner, but you can be slower going in. It's getting off the corner that's vital, and Morgan will be more than aware of that. Simon Orange triangulated the approach towards Goddard's and took a subtly different line to everybody else, and I think that's actually cost him a little bit more time by the look of things. So up towards now the start of the 5th lap of the race. Hugo Cook with a new fastest lap overall that time through. 1 minute 28.324 brings the gap down to 0.3 of a second between 1st and 2nd place. They propel themselves downhill and in towards the old hairpin. The order, however, still remains the same, and Simon Orange is falling ever more away now, I would say. So he's lost more time relative to the leading pair. This is the lead battling Group GTC. Jensen Lunn and the light blue car, which is James Webb, both squabbling for the lead of Group GTC in their Super Trofeo spec Lamborghini Huracans. They've both been passed on this lap by the number 44 car, which is John Whitehouse. But John Whitehouse is in a Group GT3 McLaren, so it's not surprising he's got through. Now we're going to have a change for the lead, lots of moving around, but no, order still remains the same. Morgan Tilbrook feeling the pinch to a degree from Hugo Cook, but is still managing to keep the zip-cap supported Enduro Motorsport McLaren ahead. Hugo Cook, is he going to have a lunge this time? Very close, he's on the grass heading in towards the Melbourne hairpin. Morgan Tilbrook just gave him enough room there, more because he was concerned there was going to be contact if he didn't. And Hugo Cook's going to have another nibble, is he? Now again, trying to apply the pressure, trying to force Morgan Tilbrook into a mistake. And maybe those two cars now, it's the Mercedes that has the better car at this stage of the race. Still this good fight going on as well between the two Mercs and the McLaren and Phil Carter. Phil hanging on to the spot despite the very best efforts of Stephen Walton's Mercedes. Ed McDermott making his debut in the GT Cup Championship this weekend, working hard. Phil Carter will hand the car over to Michael Broadhurst, the pro. Stephen Walton will hand it over to his teammate Chris Hart. And Ed McDermott will hand it over to the reigning overall GT Cup champion, Sam Neary, for part two. And I suspect for all of these cars, they will certainly, in the case of Phil Carter and Ed McDermott, do it right at the front end of the pit stop window, because they'll be popping the pros on board, whereas for Stephen Walton and Chris Hart, two amateur drivers, they will choose when they want to do it in the pit window. The good thing is they will stop for certainly less time than Mercedes that sit behind and the McLaren that sits ahead, because both of those will have pro drivers on board, so they'll stop for longer come the pit stop window. Now the pit stop window is still 12 minutes away. The lead battling Group GTC is becoming ever tighter as Jensen Lunn in the Top Cats Racing Mercedes is under pressure from the Team Webb Lamborghini Huracan. So up towards Coppice Corner goes the number 9 Lamborghini. Pushing hard is Jensen Lunn, who was the runner-up in the overall GT Cup Championship last year. Over the start-finish line now, Hugo Cook has taken the lead of the race. That's down at the Melbourne hairpin. Morgan Tilbrook is down into second, and it could be third here because he's now under the cosh from Simon Orange. So Hugo Cook down at the Melbourne hairpin, we gather, picked up the lead of the race. We didn't see it, but that's where he managed to sneak through. He'd already had a couple of goes there, hadn't he, to try and work his way through. He's also set the fastest lap of the race as well on a previous lap. Now Morgan Tilbrook, is he going to hang on to second place? Well, he is at the moment looking reasonably comfortable in second place because Simon Orange isn't quite as close now as he was coming over the start-finish line. So it's Mercedes, McLaren, McLaren, Mercedes, McLaren, McLaren at this stage is the top 6. Group GTC leading car is there in 7th place, Jensen Lunn, but under attack from James Webb. Group GTH is being led by James Wallace at the wheel of the Veluga Porsche. And our other group leaders are going to be the number 3 Ginetta of Charlotte Birch and Sam Random. Charlotte Birch starting that car, leading Group GTA, and Group GTB is being led by the Audi of David Frankland. Those are your group leaders as we look at the squabble that's now going on. This will be for 14th, 15th and 16th, but 2nd, 3rd and 4th in Group GTH. This is Tamer Shahan in the McLaren, under attack from Tim Kresick at the wheel of the Caffeine 6 with Tar Motorsport Porsche, and then the Team Orange powered by JMH McLaren of Will Dendy that sits behind. Will already having taken a Group GTH win earlier on this weekend, driving solo in this race, as is Tim Kresick, the car ahead. Whereas for Tamer Shahan, he will hand over to the Pro Sporting driver Tom Roach. So down the straight they will thread their way. Tamer Shahan handing over to Tom Roach, will remain stationary in the pit lane for 70 seconds because Tom Roach is classed as a Pro Sporting driver. The Porsche that sits behind will remain stationary for a shorter period of time, just 60 seconds. And it's that same 60 seconds for Will Dendy. So all they really need to do is stay on the coattails of the McLaren and they should leapfrog it in the pit window. So up towards us now, that's going to be Andre Borodin at the wheel of one of the Greystone GT McLaren 720S GT3s. He has got another Greystone prepared car, but that's the Lamborghini that sits behind. Number 22 car in the hands of Rich Mason, having his first outing this weekend in a GT3 car in the GT Cup. Regularly has been looking better in GT4 cars for the last few years, but Rich Mason still getting to grips with this Lamborghini. Of course, he lost seat time earlier on in the weekend with an incident on the green flag lap of the first sprint race of the weekend. Also, Roy Millington was coming under pressure there as well. Now we've got 38 minutes to go. Over the start-finish line goes Hugo Cook, who's now for the first time getting amongst the traffic. So that is Alex Stevenson's Ginetta that he's gone through and passed. That's the number 6 V8 engined G56 Super Cup car. So that's a Group GTC car that he's lapped. Morgan Tilbrook will pick that car off on the run down through Hollywood. Simon Orange will also squeeze his way through, so the second and third place car dealing with the back marker and not losing a great deal of time, but the lead advantage is building now for Hugo Cook. He's 2.8 seconds up the road. Now he will stop for 85 seconds, but of course he will remain behind the wheel of the car, whereas the car in second place, number 66, Morgan Tilbrook, will hand it over to the pro driver Marcus Clutton. Simon Orange will hand his car over, the third place car, to the pro driver Michael O'Brien. So we've not seen many times the overall win has been a clean sweep over the weekend, and at the moment 3 wins out of 3 for the number 66 McLaren. Are they going to make it 4 out of 4 and replicate the feat of what happened sort of last June, was it, when the Nearys claimed all 4 races at Snetterton on our first of 2 visits there in the 2021 championship season. Not only have they lost the lead of the race, they're going to have to stop for a longer period of time than all of the cars that they're squabbling with, either be those cars ahead or behind, all going to have to stop for a shorter period of time, and with no change of tyres, as we know, for Marcus Clutton. He's not going to get a new set of boots on that car. It's going to make it tough for them, I think, to do the clean sweep, as the race leader Hugo Cook is now picking his way through that titanic battle that we had been looking at for positions of 6th, 7th and 8th in Group GTH. So traffic dealt with, Hugo Cook can press on again. He's got the safety net of 3 back markers between himself and the cars behind. And we've still got the best part of 7 minutes before the pit window opens at this stage, the first of 2 pit windows, because for, the best part of 10 minutes to go, I should say, before the pit window opens, the first of 2 pit windows. First pit window will open for those cars in Group GTB, Group GTH and Group GTA. And the second pit window is for the cars in Group GT3 and Group GTC, which are the cars towards the sharp end of the order. Simon Orange looking to try and utilise the back markers here to try and gain an advantage if he can on Morgan Tilbrook, but I don't think either of them are going to gain a great deal of advantage as they thread their way through and past the traffic. Simon Orange now draws himself alongside Morgan Tilbrook. He's got the outside line heading in towards the S's. Both of the McLarens break at the same point, but sweeping his way right the way across the nose of Morgan Tilbrook. Brilliant move from Simon Orange, was so brave and committed, and was able to work his way through into second position. So great driving there from Simon Orange. That's the championship leading car up into second in the race now, and the car that's been so dominant this weekend now down into third position. Now this is lap number 10, which is about to be completed. So they head out of Goddard's corner, the lead advantage stretching all of the time, so the gap from Hugo Cook to the new second place car Simon Orange is now 6.2 seconds, as you can see. So it's all looking reasonably under control at the moment. After these 3 cars, it's Ian Loggy that's down in 4th position at the wheel of the number 16 Mercedes. Ian Campbell in the number 23 Greystone McLaren is still there in 5th, and 6th at the moment is number 44, which is Steve Ruston. You can see that Ian Loggy has got his hands full at the moment in the 4th place car, because now he's flashing his lights and trying to thread his way in his GT3 Mercedes past the GT4 Merc of Stephen Walton. Having dealt with that, the next car he's going to squeeze through and past is Phil Carter's car. Traffic dealt with. Scotsman can put his head down and crack on again. So the Cure Leukemia car having dealt with the traffic. And now for Phil Carter, for Stephen Walton, and for the car that sits behind that, they can all start to push on again. So Hugo Cook, by the look of things, has got a problem, because through has gone Simon Orange and Morgan Tilbrook, and there's a problem for the Mercedes. It looks like it might be a puncture. Yes, it is. It's a left rear puncture for Hugo Cook. You can see the Pirelli tyre is almost coming off the rim. There's bits of debris flying around. He needs to be careful how quickly he brings this back to the car, back to the pit lane, because you don't want to have the tyre totally delaminate and start to rip the bodywork apart. So you want to get back quickly because you don't want to lose time. You certainly don't want to cause lots of damage to the car. Remember, this is before the pit window opens, so Hugo Cook is going to have to pit again. This cannot be the mandatory pit stop, so hopefully the team are ready to go. They'll have a new Pirelli slick tyre ready to bolt on it, but that's an enormous shame for Hugo Cook, who was looking to try and make amends from the problems that befell him in the sprint race earlier on when he had an off. It doesn't look as though they've got a new tyre ready. They weren't quite expecting him, which means that this pit stop is going to take slightly longer than otherwise it would. It now means this car here, the championship leading car of Simon Orange, picks up the lead of the race, and up to second comes the car that has yet to be beaten so far this weekend, which is Morgan Tilbrook. But again, there's more traffic to deal with. Will Dendy sees them coming, indicates to the left and gets out of harm's way. The Cook Motorsport crew struggling to get the wheel back on, so it looks as though there might be a small amount of damage that's been caused there, and that's what's preventing bolting the new tyre back on and getting Hugo back into the race. And whilst all of this is going on, of course, he's tumbling down through the order, and he's now going to drop off the lead lap, I'm afraid. Simon Orange, though, he'll be pleased he's taken the lead. He'll be conscious there's traffic that he needs to deal with, and it's only going to become ever more frequent having to carve your way through the traffic. Tim Krezik's Porsche is the next of those that he's going to want to try and weave his way through and pass. That's the car that's third in Group GTH for the GT4 homologated cars. Having dealt with that, the next car he's going to then want to try and work his way through and past is going to be Teemu Shaham at the wheel of the Paddock Motorsport car. Still the Mercedes being dealt with. Hacksaws coming out, gaffer tape no doubt going on, and the difficulty is when you get the tyre flailing apart, it's not just bodywork, but it can start to take apart ABS sensors. It can start to affect the dampers on the car. If you start to rip those apart, you end up with a leak on a damper or something like that. So maybe there's a few issues they're just trying to understand before, fingers crossed, we see that car back out. But for Hugo Cook, yeah, any chance of a win this weekend, long gone now, I'm afraid. 31 minutes of the race remaining, which means it's a little more than a couple of minutes to go now before the first of the pit stop windows will open. So what are we, 5 minutes away, and then we'll see the pit window open. Rich Mason at the wheel of number 22 Lamborghini works his way out of Goddard's corner. He's inside the top 10 now at the wheel of that Lamborghini Huracan. In fact, he's just come up to 9th position whilst that Mercedes still sits forlornly in the pit lane. Finally, the new tyre is going on, but Hugo Cook will have now dropped well and truly down towards pretty much the bottom of the order. Everybody else in the meantime, of course, moves up a place, including this car here, which is the number 11 car of Mike Price, who is now inside the top 6. And finally, Hugo Cook can propel himself back down the pit lane and back into the race. But where is he going to rejoin? A long, long, long way down through the order. Through goes Teemu Shaham, through goes Tim Krezik, and through will go Will Dendy as well. So I think that's 15th, 16th position that he'll rejoin. The lead of the race, though, still only half a second separating the two McLarens. Roy Millington's Group GTC Ferrari 488 Challenge spec car is the next of those that they want to try and deal with. Roy sees them coming, gets out of harm's way. Through goes Simon Orange, through goes Morgan Tilbrook. Up towards Redgate Corner comes still that fight that we've been concentrating on as well, which is now the number 14 car of Philip Carter, who has been overtaken a few laps ago by Stephen Walton, and the make happen Mercedes is already starting to disappear off, but Phil Carter is now finding another Mercedes is applying the pressure to him, that being Ed McDermott at the wheel of the ABBA number 8 car. So through the old hairpin, does the Mercedes get a run this time heading through Schwantz Curve? Can Philip Carter hang on to what is 7th in the group? Can Ed McDermott unlock the door to sneak his way through? He's been bottled up behind one car or another since the beginning of the race, Ed, but as we heard from him when he spoke to Michelle earlier on in the weekend, getting quicker and quicker and quicker all of the time, thoroughly enjoying his time in the GT4 car prepared by ABBA Racing, that Sam Neary will take over, and we saw what Sam did behind the wheel of it in yesterday's pit stop race. But we're now on to lap number 15 for the leading pair. McLaren from Mercedes from McLaren, the top 4. As they head down through Craner Curves, it's the Audi of David Frankland that is now working their way through and past. That's the car that leads Group GTB at the moment, but is down in 23rd position. About 2.5 minutes away from the first pit window opening, which may well see these cars that we're looking at now headed towards the pit lane, because both Phil Carter and Ed McDermott are scheduled to hand their car over to pro drivers. For Phil Carter, he's going to be handing it over to Michael Broadhurst. That's the number 14 car. Michael Broadhurst, who we've seen racing in British GT and European GT4. First cut his teeth, though, in Formula Renault and Formula Ford. And for Ed McDermott, of course, it's the reigning champion he'll hand it over to. First thing that he needs to do is watch his mirrors, though, because he's got the ever-present danger of John Whitehouse trying to squeeze the GT3 McLaren through and ahead of the GT4 Mercedes. So a flash of the lights for John Whitehouse as the signature RV Paddock Motorsport prepared car. Is it going to squeeze its way through? Yep, inside at Schwann's Curve. And that has now just split up that little battle between the pair of Group GTH cars. So Ed McDermott doing the right thing, getting out of harm's way. Of course, now what he's got to try and do is catch back up to the car that he was doing battle with. Now the lead advantage is still less than a second between Simon Orange and Morgan Tilbrook. They are 15 laps into this race. The clouds are starting to just come over a little bit more now, so the sunlight that was peeking through at the beginning of the race seems to have disappeared to a degree. There's still the odd little bit of blue sky. There's no obvious sign of any ominous looking clouds coming over, so I think we're okay as they head uphill and in towards the right-hander at McLean's Corner. Still the orange racing powered by JMH McLaren that leads the Enduro Motorsport McLaren. The Ram Racing Mercedes of Ian Logie sitting there in third position, and then for positions further back, it looks as though still leading Group GTC at this stage is going to be the number 9 Top Cats Racing Hex.com Lamborghini. He has managed to get a couple of cars between himself and the car he had been doing battle with, which was the James Webb driven light blue Lamborghini. Pit window is now only 30 seconds away from opening as well, so you might see some cars diving for the pit lane very shortly. That pit window will be open for the cars that run in Group GTB, Group GTH and Group GTA. So in other words, David Franklin, I think, is the only representative in Group GTB now in the Audi. And then any of the GT4 cars can come in, and Group GTA is for the Ginetta G55s. Lots and lots of dust suggests that somebody's had an off at the old hairpin. And when we look towards Alex Stevenson as he goes through the shot, was that Mike Price that had the off? Because the Mercedes was looking as though it's going slightly slower up the hill than one might have expected for a GT3 car, so Mike Price maybe just cleaning off what might be dusty and dirty Pirellis. Sector time from Mike Price. We'll pick up on as to what he does through the middle sectors, because he should be about 35 seconds through the middle sector. If he's slower than that, that might suggest, yes, he was 43 seconds through the middle sector, so yes, it must have been Mike Price that had that off. We saw the dust, we heard the noise, we didn't see the car, but the sector time tells the tale. Now, pit window is now open for the cars in Group 2, as we'd call it, so the smaller engine capacity cars, and you can see they're all filing their way in. So Will Dendy is in, David Franklin is in. Into the pit lane comes Ed McDermott, as I suggested. Stephen Walton enters the pit lane at the far background of the shot. We've also got, that looks like Phil Carter in at the wheel of the McLaren, and also there's one more car after him, which is going to be Ed McDermott. So yeah, into the pit lane they all come. Stephen Walton extracting himself out of the car. Chris Hart poised and ready to jump in the Make Happen Racing Mercedes, for which there's only one Make Happen Racing Mercedes in this weekend. John Curry is not in the entry list for this weekend. Hopefully we'll see John back out at Snetterton. Also into the pit lane comes Charlotte Birch at the wheel of the Top Cats Racing Ginetta to hand over to Sam Randon, former Group GTB champion, back in for this weekend. So that's just meant that some of the slower cars out on track as far as the front runners are concerned have headed into the pit lane, and this car still continues to lead Group GTC at the moment, which is Jensen Lum. So the sole Top Cats Racing Lamborghini that we've got in the entry list for this weekend is about to be lapped by our race leader Simon Orange, and Jensen Lund will wait until he comes out of McLean's Corner to let that car through, whilst now safely on board the Top Cats Racing Ginetta is being bolted Sam Randon. Sam, who certainly has plenty of experience racing these Ginettas in the GT Cup Championship. and also in the Ginetta GT4 Super Cup a season or so ago. But for the sister Top Cat's car, in the hands of Jensen Lund, that continues out on circuit because the pit window, the second pit window, is not open for these cars yet. They've still got to wait another 2.5 minutes before the pit window opens for those that are running at the front end of the order. Again, on the basis that the pros cannot start the race, they can only get in when the pit window opens. Common sense would tell you, you get the pro in as soon as you can, get the quicker driver in as quickly as you possibly can, because it gives you the best possible chance. Timo Shahan is bolting in Tom Roach, so the Paddock Motorsport prepared McLaren has now got on board Tom Roach, who owns and runs his own Supercar Experience Day company. Tom, a former Mazda MX-5 champion, who has gone well behind the wheel of this car actually, and Timo Shahan has got quicker and quicker and quicker as the season's gone on. We've also now got Sam Neary behind the wheel of this car here, so Ed McDermott having done a good job. Number 8 ABBA Racing Mercedes now in the hands of Sam Neary, who went really well yesterday and was able to slowly pick his way through what, if memory serves me correctly, was second place in Group GTH. Yes, it was. Yeah, second position in Group GTH this car finished yesterday. Didn't quite claim the group win. We'll see what they might be able to do today, particularly if Ed McDermott's gone quicker and quicker and quicker as the weekend has gone on. The other good thing for this car is that it has, whilst it's had a little bit of success penalty, it's not had to stop quite as long as some of the other cars, so we'll have to see how it all plays through. Of course, we've had no safety car appearances yet, so everybody is driving flat out, and has been now as we get to what is the halfway point of the race just beyond. So Sam Neary heading uphill towards Goddard's. Keep an eye as to what's going on at the sharp end as well, because in another 45 seconds the second pit window is about to open, which then means that everybody can file their way in. So over the start-finish line comes Sam Neary, indicates and allows our race leader to go by, Simon Orange, who can't pit on this lap because the window isn't open. Morgan Tilbrook in second place also has to continue round for a further lap. Ian Loggy goes through. Into the pit lane comes Alex Stevenson. Now, Alex Stevenson is in a Group GTC car, which means that I don't think the pit window is open for them just yet. I think he's coming to the pit lane about 20 seconds too quickly. So if they conduct the pit stop now, my reading of the regulations is correct, that's before the window's opened. So it comes to a halt either way. James Kellett, who's doing brilliant things in the Ginetta Super Cup this year, will be heading towards Silverstone to see if he can wrap up the title next weekend, potentially, such has been his success. But that car comes to a halt now. It's up on the air jacks, but it doesn't look as though there's a driver change, so it may well be, yeah, it was an unscheduled pit stop, so it wasn't as though it was a miscalculation with the timings. I think Alex Stevenson might have had a problem. It doesn't look as though they're doing a driver change at the moment. So Hugo Cook, after his new tyre has been bolted on, will now work his way through the order. We know Hugo Cook already having been into the pits for a new tyre, pitted outside of the window, so we know that car will have to pit again. As Alex Stevenson came into the pit lane before the window was open, I think he'll have to go back out and pit again as well. I don't think, even if he has a really long delay to try and repair the car, I still think that car entered the pit lane before the window is open. If that's the case, my understanding of the regs is he's got to go back out and bring the car back in again, but that's not for me to worry about, that's for the officials. That's just my thoughts in terms of the intention of the regulations. But the pit window is now open for everybody else, so they all file their way in. In comes the number 67 McLaren, Simon Orange, to hand over to Michael O'Brien. In comes the number 66 McLaren, Morgan Tilbrook, to hand over to Marcus Clutton. In comes the number 9 Lamborghini, Jensen Lund, to hand over to Charlotte Gilbert. Number 24 is in as well, Andre Borodin, to hand over to Ed Peed. Everybody's coming into the pit lane, including Ian Loggy, the number 16 Ram Racing Mercedes, which, remember, for this weekend is partnered up with Phil Keane, so they come in. Number 44, John Whitehouse is in to hand over to Steve Ruston. Number 11, Mike Price is in to hand over to Callum McLeod. So they are all in the pit lane, including Rich Mason to hand over to John Lancaster in the Lamborghini. Roy Millington in the Ferrari is in to hand over to Benny Simonson. They're all in the pit lane. So the top 8 cars are in the pit lane at the moment. The only car that stayed out is the number 13 Group GTC James Webb driven Lamborghini at this stage. And he will now pick up the lead of Group GTC. Hugo Cook has also stayed out. Of course, he's rolling the dice to try and see whether there might be a safety car which might bring him back into contention, but he's already a lap or two off the lead, so it's not really going to happen for Hugo Cook through no fault of his own, just that puncture and then the subsequent extra delay whilst they worked on the damage in the number 36 Cook Motorsport Mercedes. There's two driver names on it. That's because Sasha Kakad has shared this car with Hugo over the course of this week, over the course of the season, but not this weekend. Everybody that had pitted is now trundling their way back out again. So it looks as though Ed Peed is going to probably steal the march and bring the Greystone GT McLaren out of the pit lane ahead of everybody else. Now Michael O'Brien is instantly going to get on it and try and carve his way through and past that machine. So yeah, Michael O'Brien straight away back onto it, and I think that will probably mean that because they stopped for 90 seconds in total, I think that might be enough potentially for them still to hang on to the lead of the race as and when we've cycled our way through. Might bring into contention also the number 16 Mercedes of Phil Keane. Yeah, there were problems for that Ginetta. You can see it was on its air jacks and dollies and is about to be pulled into the garage. So yeah, it was not a miscalculation of when the pit window opened. It was just a few seconds before the pit window opened that Alex Stevenson clearly had an issue with the car, so it heads in towards the pit lane, I'm afraid to say. And the sole car that stayed out the extra lap has now pitted as well, which was the number 13 Lamborghini of James Webb. So that car will now have to forego the lead for the moment at Group GTC, and we'll look to try and see what it can do when it heads back out there. Now James Webb stationary for 60 seconds. Jensen Lund giving way to Charlotte Gilbert, stationary for 80 seconds. So I think the light blue Lamborghini will probably come out of this with the lead of Group GTC, purely because it had to stop for a shorter period of time. So we'll run you down through the order as they flash their way over the start-finish line, because 21 laps are shortly about to be completed. It is number 67, Michael O'Brien, in the dark blue McLaren that leads the way. It's Phil Keane in the number 16 Mercedes that's up to second. Third at the moment is going to be the number 66 McLaren of Marcus Clutton, having taken over from Morgan Tilbrook. And fourth hasn't come over the start-finish line yet, but it should be, I think, the number 23 McLaren of Ollie Webb, having taken over from Ian Campbell. I think that will be the car that should come through in fourth position. Yes, it is. So it's journey now just come over the start-finish line in fourth place. So that gives you the top four as things currently stand. But for Simon Orange and Michael O'Brien, you remember Simon was chatting to Michelle at the top of the programme. What he wanted as a birthday present for Michelle was a win. Well, at the moment they're in that position of leading, but what is the gap going to do between themselves and the charging Mercedes of Phil Keane, who put Phil Keane in anything, he's quick. So he is slightly slower than Michael O'Brien through the first and the second sectors, but that's largely because he had traffic to deal with. And already we're starting to see the pros behind the wheel and new fastest laps come in, because Callum McLeod has taken over the number 11 Mercedes. That's the light green car from Mike Price. Already new fastest lap of the race, 1:27.190. And I think we're about to see Michael O'Brien at the wheel of the race leading number 76 McLaren go even quicker, because he's purple through the first and the second sector as that car comes over the start-finish line now. Yep, new fastest lap of the race, 1:26.906, and the lead advantage from McLaren to number 16 Mercedes is 3.968 seconds. So that's the gap that Phil Keane is going to want to try and hunt down, if he can do it at all. So down through the Craner curves goes our race leader. Out of Redgate corner comes number 36 Hugo Cook, who has now completed his pit stop. So we saw him in for the change of tyre and the puncture. He's now come in for the regulatory side of the pit stop. And I think they'll probably still put him just outside of the top 10, so he's still making progress picking off some of the slower and less powerful cars, but he's still something like 9th in Group GT3 at the moment. As we say, he's not in for championship points this weekend. Whereas this car here that leads overall, Michael O'Brien, is certainly in for championship points, because him and Simon Orange are hoping to hang on to the championship lead after this weekend as we head to Snetterton. There aren't a single overall championship that can be stitched up, so whether it be Group GT3, Group GTC, Group GTH, Group GTA, Group GTB, and the overall championship, all will go down to the wire at Snetterton. Mathematically, it's not, we don't think, possible for any of them to be sorted out here at Donington Park this weekend, so we will go to the final weekend of racing before we crown any champions. Now, the number 9 Top Cats Racing Lamborghini has now been taken over by Charlotte Gilbert, who has been doing brilliantly well the last couple of rounds. Really got to grips with the Lamborghini. Not the easiest car to drive. New to it this year, having driven, of course, the rather manual and mechanical Marcus Mantis in this championship for a season or so. Very different prospect is the Lamborghini Huracan. But herself and Jensen Lund have really gelled, as we heard from Warren Gilbert, who could not be any prouder really with what the team are doing in his absence. And at the moment that car is running in the top 10, however, because it had to stop for longer in the pit stop compared to the light blue Lamborghini of James Webb, it is now running second in Group GTB. It was the leader, sorry, Group GTC, it was the leader. It's now second in the group. The light blue Lambo is the one that leads the way. So Michael O'Brien, having dealt with a chunk of traffic, has now got clear air ahead of him. The lead advantage between himself and Phil Keane has now gone out to 4.0 seconds, so it's gone out by a little bit more than a tenth really since we last picked up on it. They're on lap number 24 at the moment. We squeezed 30 laps out of the race yesterday, albeit we did have, I think, a brief safety car period, didn't we, as the pit window opened because of the errant car of Patrick Collins yesterday, so we should be north of 30 laps today, maybe 31, 32 laps we'll get out of this one. So over the start-finish line, onto lap number 25 now goes Michael O'Brien. Sorry, I think I said Simon Orange a few moments ago, but Michael O'Brien, of course, had taken over that car. Phil Keane in second place, coming through at the wheel of the Mercedes with its lights on. Third place is the number 66 McLaren of Marcus Clutton, who is bottled up to a degree behind the blue and yellow Greystone car, which is Ed Peed. So Ed is a pro driver. He's going to be running a very similar pace to Marcus Clutton, and he's not going to make it easy for him to get by, but equally as much at some point the former runner-up in the Renault Clio Championship will need to yield. Ed was, what, 3 times a runner-up in the Renault Clio UK Cup, 2003, 2004, 2005. We've seen him out racing Porsche Carrera Cup GB. He did race motorcycles as well for a period of time, did Ed Peed. At the moment, he has now leapt through Marcus Clutton, so that's the third place car going through and lapping the car that's now in 7th position, whilst they both try and lap the number 39 car, which is in the hands of Darren Kell, that runs in 17th position and 6th in Group GTH. Darren doing a good job of just staying out of the way really and letting the quick GT3 cars with the pros on board now go through. Now something has happened on that lap to James Webb, who has lost a couple of positions and has now dropped down to 9th place. He still leads Group GTC. I think he was just letting quicker GT3 cars go through, and he's still 25 seconds ahead of Charlotte Gilbert. So yeah, it does look a comfortable lead actually in Group GTC for James Webb. For a split second I was concerned there might be a problem, but sector time suggesting, here comes the light blue Lamborghini now into shot. It was just letting through some of the quicker cars. So this is the car that leads Group GTC. It's already had a Group GTC win earlier on this weekend, and for the brothers Tom and James Webb, who share this car throughout what has been not a full season for them, but a part season. It's good to see them back in GT Cup. Hopefully we'll see them in for a full season next year. Because again, they're a couple of drivers that have been very successful in GT Cup over the years. They were the GTC champions back in 2019. They were GTB champions back in 2016. They were the Sprint Cup champions 2019 as well. So they've had a good chunk of success. Finished 3rd overall in the championship in 2015, so they've been long time supporters of the GT Cup, and at the moment that car is running in 9th position overall, leading Group GTC. Leading Group GTH is the number 86 Porsche at the moment, and that is Tim Kresick who leads that way, but it might be worth just having a quick look at what's going on in Group GTH as well, because the number 86 Porsche of Tim Kresick has got the orange Will Dendy driven McLaren bearing down on it, so that could be a battle to watch, because that is forming for the lead of the group with 9.5 minutes to go. So the race leader has now completed 26 laps. We're looking at Sam Neary, who is 8th in Group GTH currently. Because we haven't seen that car out for the full season, it does mean that it runs in the invitation. Now this is the lead battle that's beginning to form now for Group GTH. So this is Tim Kresick fighting away with Will Dendy, who is closing, ever closing. The relative lap times between the pair of them last time through, Tim Kresick was a 1:36.3, Will Dendy was a 1:36.0, so the gap is down to 1.5 seconds between the pair of them. So it's the Caffeine 6x Par Motorsport Porsche being driven solo by Tim Creswick. We made the mistake yesterday of saying that Chris Diamond had took over the car, but blissfully unaware that Chris was away racing elsewhere this weekend. So it's Tim Creswick racing solo yesterday. And back into the pit lane. Oh, Hugo Cook out of the race, I'm afraid. So it's been a difficult day for Hugo Cook with retirement in the sprint race as a result of a trip into the gravel, and now retirement in the pit stop race, I'm afraid. Not the day he would have wished for, bearing in mind how quick that car has been all weekend. So Tim Creswick still hanging on to the lead of Group GTH. He drives solo. The car that's trying to hunt him down, Will Dendy, drives solo. They've also both got the overall race leader bearing down on them as well, which is the number 67 McLaren of Michael O'Brien, who is now 4.4 seconds up the road from Phil Keane. So the lead advantage since the pros got on board has grown between Michael O'Brien and Phil Keane. Will Dendy again indicating where he wants the car to go. Of course, they both are being run by exactly the same team, so not surprising that he lets the race leader go through. Then, very effectively, Tim Creswick is placed a further lap down by Michael O'Brien, who is looking good here for what would be their best result of the weekend. First race of the weekend, the sprint race, we saw the number 67 McLaren finish in what was third position. It finished second in the pit stop race yesterday. In the race earlier on today, Simon Orange was caught out, as were so many drivers in the slippy conditions, and he finished in 8th position. It would be their first win of the weekend, and this car here still continues to lead Group GTC as well, so doing a really good job. Another driver that's driving solo, James Webb. Usually what happens is that James will do one race solo and his brother Tom will do the next race solo. It's not very often, actually. They share the car over the course of a pit stop race. It's usually one will do the whole race one day, one will do the whole race the next. Whatever works for them seems to certainly work, because they have been, to say, very successful in GT Cup over the years, whether it either be in this car that they acquired a couple of seasons ago now, 2 or 3 years ago, or what was a very, very successful car with them, the BMW E46 that they ran for a good number of years. 14 now taken over by Michael Broadhurst. That was the car that we saw having a good battle in the hands of Philip Carter earlier on. That car runs in 18th position overall, 7th in Group GTH, and is about 5 seconds off catching the next car ahead of it, which would be Darren Kell's Mercedes. Michael Broadhurst is the pro. Darren Kell is an AM in reality, so you would expect the number 14 Greystone GT McLaren to begin to close up and maybe catch the number 39 Mercedes before too much longer. So little more than, or little less than 6 minutes to go. Will Dendy as yet has not edged the McLaren right up onto the coattails of the Porsche. Is he on his way anymore though? Let's have a quick look. Last time through, Tim Creswick was a few thousandths of a second slower than Will Dendy. It looks as though the gap between the pair of them is certainly closing up, and I think Will Dendy is getting the extra impetus now to know full well that the potential of a group win is on here. So this is going to be I think an intriguing battle to watch for the remaining 5 or so minutes between the pair of them. The overall lead battle has shrunk as well, I would imagine as a result of traffic, because Phil Keane had got the gap down from 4 seconds to 2 seconds. It's back to 3.2, so I think that's ebbing and flowing because of where they meet the back markers. Group GTH, Will Dendy has done all of the hard work to catch. Now, if he's got anything else in reserve, he needs to start to use it here, because he is now fully caught Tim Creswick, and the gap between the pair of them is less than 0.6 of a second as they go through and onto what for them is their 28th lap of the race. So down through the Craner curve, they're on lap number 28. The overall race leader is on lap number 30 at the moment. Both of these cars had to stop for a minimum period of time in the pits, which was 60 seconds. There was no additional success seconds for them to worry about. They're both amateur drivers, so they stop for the minimum amount of time anyway. They've got another Group GT3 car trying to weave their way past, which is going to be Ed Peed at the wheel of the number 24 Greystone GT McLaren that he took over from Andre Borodin. So again, Will Dendy well aware, just indicates that the fact he's going to pull, he's to one side, he's seen the quicker car trying to come through. He wants to minimise the amount of time he holds up the quicker traffic, but he also wants to minimise the amount of time that he loses whilst letting it go through. So this time in towards the braking area for the S's yet again. Porsche from McLaren for the lead of Group GTH, which is for the GT4 homologated cars. And what are they going to have after this? Probably the lap they're starting, and I think 2 more thereafter. So there's still about 7.5 miles of squabbling to go to try and work out who's going to pick up the lead of Group GTH. Again, Will Dendy just indicating where this time he wants John Lancaster to go at the wheel of the brand new Hurricane GT3 car to Greystone GT for this weekend. The Hurricane also goes through and past Tim Kresick, so the Group GTH drivers can yet again crack on with their squabble. Frustrating thing for Will Dendy is every time he gets closer to the Porsche, there's another quicker car comes through, and therefore he does the right thing. He gets out of the way, but then that just costs him all of that time that he just managed to chip away at. So hopefully there'll be a clear lap or so that he can really push on now, Will. Tim Kresick will be desperate to try and claim the win if he can, because that number 86 Porsche over the course of this weekend was 3rd in the first sprint race of the weekend. It was 5th in its group in the pit stop race yesterday. It was 5th earlier on today as well. So he'll want to try and see if he can scoop up a win in the group. And that would be long overdue, because that car, whilst we haven't seen it every single round, has not had a group win so far this season. So that'd be a great end to the weekend for Par Motorsport. We've also got Sam Mayer-Loughnane at the wheel of what is the car that leads the Group GTH Championship, now coming under pressure from the Welshman Tom Roach. Tom Roach looking to try and thread the needle at the wheel of the Paddock Motorsport McLaren. He might get up the inside of the Porsche, but then that would still put him on the outside line for the S's. They've also got, flashing his lights behind, the Make Happen Racing number 69 Mercedes in the hands of Chris Hart, not that far away. And this is a good little fight for the final podium spot in Group GTH. 3rd is the Porsche, 4th is the McLaren, 5th is the Mercedes, and Chris Hart at the wheel of the Mercedes brakes as late as he dare, heading in towards the Melbourne hairpin. Sam Mayer-Loughnane almost outbrakes himself. Tom Roach looks to try and sneak up the inside. It looks as though they are still going to remain in the same order as they head towards Goddard. Or has Chris Hart got anything in reserve? Yes, he has. He sneaks up the inside, he makes contact with the Porsche as Mercedes spins Sam Mayer-Loughnane round right ahead of Callum McLeod. Sam Mayer-Loughnane does a full 360. But Chris Hart, with that little bit of contact, gained a little bit of advantage there. Thankfully, though, it was a fairly light touch, so hopefully it hasn't holed the radiator on the Mercedes, and hopefully it hasn't caused any problems with the tail end of the Porsche following the crunch. We are now into the final 60 seconds of this race. We've also had, by the look of things, whilst all of that was going on, the change for the lead of Group GTH, because Will Dendy has made it through and ahead of Tim Kresick. So we have finally had the McLaren go through and ahead of the Porsche for the lead of the group, whilst now Michael O'Brien is on to what for him will be his last lap of the race. So out of Redgate Corner he will go, through Hollywood and down through the Crater Curves for the final time. It's been a pretty successful season so far for Simon Orange and Michael O'Brien. They claimed a win here at Donington Park in the first weekend of racing. Looks as though they're going to claim another win here in what will be the penultimate weekend of racing. And there we also just saw briefly the fact that, yes, the lead has changed in Group GT8, but Tim Kresick is trying to fight back on what will be final lap or so for those two cars. So clock at 0, as good as, will be by the time Michael O'Brien heads out of Coppice. There we go, the clock ticks to 0, which means that the checkered flag will be readied, and it is going to be, by the look of things, a first win this weekend for Simon Orange and Michael O'Brien. They won at Donington, they won at Brands, they won at Snetterton, they finished second in both of the races at Alton, they won 2 races last time out at Silverstone. They are back to winning ways again here in the 4th and final race at Donington Park on the Grand Prix circuit, and will be in a good position to head towards the championship finale at Snetterton on the 8th and 9th of October in just, 3 weekends' time. So out of the final corner, up towards the checkered flag. It's a win for Orange Racing, powered by JMH. Simon Orange and Michael O'Brien come through to claim the win. Second place is Ram Racing Mercedes of Ian Loggy, partnered up with Phil Keane for this weekend. And third place, they couldn't quite make it the clean sweep. Morgan Tilbrook and Marcus Clutton in number 66 McLaren finish in 3rd position. 4th place is a little way back. It should be Ian Campbell and Ollie Webb that come through to finish in 4th place. Before that, we'll get the Ed Peed and Andre Borodin car over the line. But for the lead of Group GTH, Will Dendy had to work tirelessly hard for it. He only took the lead of the group a couple of laps ago. Tim Kresick at the wheel of the Porsche was on for potentially his first group win of the season, but it wasn't to be. There's the fourth place car through now. Ian Campbell and Ollie Webb. And then we'll hang on to see the Group GTH battle over the start-finish line. Will Dendy claimed the race win in a sprint race yesterday. He's going to claim a group win in what is the pit stop race today for Team Orange, powered by JMH. But you've got to feel sorry for Tim Kresick, who on solo driving duties this weekend looked as though he was on for his first group win of the season, but it wasn't quite to be, I'm afraid. Fights continue, including, of course, waiting to get over the start-finish line, our winner of Group GTC, which is going to be the car in the hands of James Webb. The light blue Lamborghini heads over the start-finish line now, and that is going to claim a second group win of the weekend in Group GTC for the Challenge specification cars, i.e. the Ferrari Challenge spec cars, the Lamborghini Super Trofeo spec cars, and Porsches are also eligible for it, but we don't have any Porsches in the entry list in Group GTC for this weekend. Sam Neary is almost the last of the cars to take the checkered flag. Once he is through, then we will see everybody on their slow down lap, ready to head in towards the pit lane. Let's go down to the pit lane for some reaction, because I think Michelle is there with Simon Orange.
Hello, yes, I am in the pit lane. We haven't got a car, but I've got a driver, and that'll do. Simon, thanks. Happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday, yes.
You did it. Yeah, I will now. You did the win. Well done. That was some good driving.
Yeah, we had a good final race because we've had a bit of a crap weekend. 2 seconds, well, a third and a second yesterday, but second in the points. And we're looking at winning the race in the rain today, and I binned it like a complete buffoon. So I was so angry. We came 5th in the end, and it should have been 1st or 2nd. So I'm pretty angry all afternoon. So
yeah, but don't be angry. But that anger must have worked. It must have got you all revved up.
It did. There was no way I wasn't coming in first there. And then Michael's so good. It was as long as the car didn't pack up, Michael was going to win.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. And of course, it's looking good then, because you're still, top of the leaderboard as it stands. There's all to play for, of course.
Yeah. It's a big weekend in 3 weekends' time at Snet, but. Yeah, we're leading the overall, we're leading the GT3, the teams and the sprint, so it's all to play for. All thanks to JMH and Chris and Adam doing a great job in the car, and Jeff on the technics, Jason overseeing it all, Graham running the team, and Michael doing the driving.
And you.
and me. Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's been great. I'm so happy that you had that win there, and it's been a great weekend of racing, of course, here at Donington Park. You just heard Simon say that we have got 3 weeks' time, so 3 weeks to wait, and we will have that final. Here we go, our winning cars coming. Have a look at that. I'll just break for a second while we see the cars. Woo! Here they go. The number 67. Hey. Fantastic. So I tell you what, Mark, I think you've got some official results for us, haven't you?
That's right, Michelle. Yeah, let's just run you through the official results of our fourth and final race here at Donington Park before we head to Snetterton. It's a win for Simon Orange and Michael O'Brien. Second was Ian Loggy, partnered up with Phil Keane, and third for Morgan Tilbrook and Marcus Clutton. Ian Campbell and Ollie Webb come home in fourth place, ahead of Mike Price and Callum McLeod. And Steve Russon and John Whitehouse complete the top six. Rich Mason and John Lancaster were seventh, ahead of Andre Borodin and Ed Peed. And James Webb finished in ninth place and scooped up the win in Group GTC. Roy Millington and Benny Simonson completed the top 10. In 11th position, it was Jensen Lunn and Charlotte Gilbert. 12th place was the winner of Group GTH with a fantastic win for Will Dendy in the end. Just missing out was Tim Kresick, who lost out on the group win and finished in 13th place, ahead of Stephen Walton and Chris Hart. The Kells, that being James and Darren, and James Wallace and Sam Mayer-Lochnan finished in 16th place, ahead of Timo Shahan and Tom Roach, Phil Carter and Michael Broadhurst, Ed McDermott and Sam Neary. And the winner of Group GTA was Charlotte Birch and Sam Randon, who finished in 20th position. Paul Maxfield was in 21st place. 22nd position was where we saw the car of the number 36 car of Hugo Cook, who of course retired, and everybody from there on in was a retiree in that particular race, our fourth and final race here at Donington Park, which means, Michelle, that the championship is beautifully poised as we head towards our final weekend of racing in a few weekends' time.
Yes, absolutely, it is. Just 3 weeks to wait. The 8th and 9th of October is where we'll see you at Snetterton. I just want to say a big thank you to you for tuning in, and also to the whole team, all our camera crew, and of course lovely Mark Werrell doing a fantastic job on the commentary, and for buying me some carrot cake as well. So thank you so much. Well done to our winners, and commiserations to those whose weekend didn't go quite as planned. We will see you in 3 weeks' time. Keep up to date on our social media for everything you need to know. It is, of course, GT Cup on the Instagram, on the Facebook, on the Twitter, and you can go to YouTube as well. We'll see you at Snetterton for the final weekend of racing in this season's GT Cup Championship. Take care.